The text from Tessa hit my phone at 2 p.m., sharp and insistent. Get your ass to Long Island. Barbecue. No excuses. I'd been holed up in my Manhattan apartment, drowning in work emails and the hum of the city, so I caved. Rest, she'd said. Right. I threw on old jeans, the kind that hug my hips like a memory, and spent too long perfecting my eyeliner. By the time I pulled up to their sprawling house, the sun was dipping low, casting gold over the backyard chaos. Kids were screaming, chasing each other with water guns. Tessa's husband was flipping burgers, sweat beading on his forehead. A couple of guys I vaguely recognized, friends of friends, probably, lounged by the cooler, cracking drinks and laughing too loud. Tessa, all bronze skin and messy bun, was pouring sambuca into shot glasses, her laughter cutting through the noise. I grabbed a plate, piled it with potato salad, and tried to blend in. But I felt it, the weight of eyes on me. Not the usual glance you get when you're the only single mom in a sea of couples. Something sharper. Then I saw him. Owen. He was leaning against the deck railing, a sleeveless tee showing off arms that hadn't been that defined the last time I'd seen him. A jagged scar ran across his shoulder, new and raw. He wasn't the kid I remembered, the one who'd crash on my couch after late-night talks with my son, Graham. This Owen was different. Grown. Too damn good-looking, with a jawline that could cut glass and eyes that didn't waver. I caught the way the younger women, daughters of Tessa's friends, stole glances at him, giggling into their drinks. But he wasn't looking at them. He was looking at me. I busied myself with a dish of cornbread, pretending I didn't notice. My heart gave a stupid lurch, the kind I hadn't felt since I was 20 and reckless. I brushed it off and headed to the kitchen to drop off a stack of dirty plates. Footsteps followed. I didn't need to turn to know it was him. The air shifted, heavier, like it knew something I didn't. Long time, he said, voice low, leaning against the counter. His presence filled the room. Too big, too close. Yeah, I said, scrubbing a plate harder than necessary. You're not exactly the scrawny kid I remember. He laughed, soft but edged. And you're still dodging compliments like they're bullets. I shot him a look, half expecting that old boyish grin. Instead, he held my gaze, steady and unapologetic. My stomach twisted. We talked. Safe stuff at first. Graham, old times, the city. But then he leaned in, just enough to make the space between us feel dangerous, and asked, "When's the last time you did something just for you?" The question landed like a punch I didn't see coming. I froze, sponge dripping suds onto the counter. What's that supposed to mean? He didn't blink. You know what it means. I deflected, tossing my hair back. And when did you stop being a boy, Owen? His smile was slow, wicked, like he'd been waiting for me to bite. A while ago. You just didn't notice. I opened my mouth to snap back, but Tessa's voice cut through, calling me for another round of shots. I bolted, grateful for the escape. Later, as I lingered by the fire pit, pretending to listen to some guy drone on about his boat, I overheard Owen on his phone. His voice carrying just enough for me to catch it. No, I'm not with her. I'm just watching her. She doesn't even see it. How much she's starving for something real. My breath caught. I didn't know if I was pissed or something else. Something hot and unsteady that made my skin prickle. I downed my drink, the sambuca burning my throat, and told myself it was nothing. Just a kid playing games. But the way my pulse raced called me a liar. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I kept replaying his words, his look, the way he'd stood too close. It wasn't just attraction. It was a challenge. A dare to step into something I wasn't sure I could handle. And the scariest part? I wasn't sure I wanted to run from it. The next morning, Tessa's voice crackled through a group text. Lake day. Jet skis. Picnic. Be there or I'll drag you. I stared at the message, my coffee going cold. Part of me wanted to bail, pack up, head back to the city, and bury myself in work. But another part, the one that kept replaying Owen's voice from last night, wouldn't let me. I threw on a swimsuit under a loose cover-up, grabbed my sunglasses, and drove to the lake, telling myself it was just a day out. Nothing more. The place was buzzing when I got there. Coolers stacked with drink, kids splashing in the shallows, and a couple of jet skis slicing through the water. Tessa waved me over, already tipsy, her bikini top barely containing her. "You're late," she yelled, tossing me a seltzer. I cracked it open, scanning the crowd. No sign of him at first, and I hated how my chest tightened at the thought he might have skipped. Then I saw him, hauling a jet ski to the shore, water dripping off his shoulders. He caught my eye and nodded casual, like we hadn't been circling each other last night. I turned away, busying myself with a plate of watermelon, but I could feel him watching. Always watching. "Wanna ride?" His voice came from behind me, close enough to make my skin hum. I turned, and there he was, holding out a life vest, that half-smile tugging at his lips. "I'm good," I said, brushing him off. "Not big on getting soaked." "Come on," he pushed, stepping closer. "You're not scared, are you?" It was a dare, plain and simple. I snatched the vest, ignoring the way my fingers brushed his. "Fine. But don't cry when I outrun you." His energy was electric, pulling my focus despite myself. He drove wild, cutting sharp turns that forced me to hold on, my heart racing from the thrill. I pushed him away, but my hands hesitated, caught in the moment. Then out of nowhere he cut the throttle. The jet ski lurched, and we went flying into the water. Ice-cold waves hit me like a slap, stealing my breath. I surfaced, gasping, my hair plastered to my face. Owen was already there, treading water, grinning like a kid who'd just pulled a prank. "You!" I sputtered, splashing him. "That was on purpose." He swam closer, too close, his eyes locked on mine. "Maybe I just wanted to see you let go for once." I shoved him, but my hands lingered on his chest a second too long. We made it to shore, and I was shivering, not just from the cold. He grabbed his shirt from the sand and tossed it to me. "Put this on. You're shaking." I did, and it smelled like him. Salt and cedar and something I couldn't place. The fabric hung loose, brushing my thighs, and I caught him staring, just for a moment, before he looked away. We rejoined the group, but the air between us was charged, like a wire humming with electricity. That night, everyone gathered around a bonfire, swapping stories. I sat on a log, nursing a drink, trying to focus on Tessa's drunk ramblings. But Owen was there, across the flames, his face half-lit, half-shadowed. He didn't say much, just sipped his drink and watched me. I told myself to ignore it, to laugh with the others, but my body wasn't listening. Then he stood, brushing past the crowd, and stopped by me, leaning down so only I could hear. "You know what I noticed?" His breath was warm against my ear. "Your lips twitch, like you're dying for a kiss but too scared to ask for it." My heart slammed against my ribs. I turned away, staring into the fire, willing my face to stay blank. "You're imagining things," I muttered, barely loud enough for him to hear. He didn't push it. Just straightened up and walked off, leaving me with the crackle of the fire and the weight of his words. I spent the rest of the night dodging him, sticking close to Tessa, but my pulse wouldn't settle. Every time I caught his eye, it was like he saw straight through me. Through the cover-up, the sarcasm, the walls I'd spent years building. When I finally crashed in the guest room, I lay there, staring at the ceiling, his shirt still tangled in my bag. I didn't know what I was doing. Didn't know why I couldn't shake him. All I knew was that something was waking up inside me, something I'd buried so deep I'd forgotten it was there. And it scared the hell out of me. Back in the city, the air felt heavier, like it was pressing down on me. I'd spent 2 days trying to shake the lake, Owen's voice, the way his shirt felt against my skin. Work helped. Endless emails, meetings, the grind of Manhattan swallowing me whole. But Nick noticed something was off. "You're quiet," he said over breakfast, his eyes flicking up from his phone. I shrugged, blamed it on stress, and he didn't push. "That night," he texted. "Let's do something fun. Meet me at La Rosa. 9 p.m. fun." Nick's version of spontaneous usually meant him trying to prove we weren't that couple. The ones who'd settled into routine like it was quicksand. La Rosa was a Mexican bar in the East Village, all dim lights, pulsing reggaeton, and the kind of crowd that screamed too much money and not enough sleep. I slipped into a black dress, tight enough to remind me I still had it, and painted my lips red. When I walked in, Nick was already there, leaning against the bar, charming the bartender with that easy grin of his. He pulled me into a kiss, quick but possessive, and handed me a mezcal margarita. "To us," he said, clinking his glass against mine. I smiled, but it felt like a mask. The night blurred. shots, laughter, bodies swaying to the beat. Nick's friend Graham showed up, dragging along a crew of loud tanned guys in linen shirts. I was halfway through my second drink when I felt it, that prickling awareness, like someone had flipped a switch in the room. I turned, and there he was. Owen. Standing by the bar, a drink in hand, his eyes cutting through the crowd straight to me. He didn't smile, didn't nod. Just watched, like I was the only thing worth seeing. My stomach dropped. I turned back to Nick, forcing a laugh at some dumb joke Graham was telling, but my skin was buzzing. Owen shouldn't be here. This was my world, my night. So why did it feel like he'd just stolen it? Nick slung an arm around me, pulling me to the dance floor. I moved with him, hips swaying, trying to lose myself in the music. But I could still feel Owen's gaze, a tether I couldn't snap. When I glanced over, he was talking to some girl, but his eyes flicked back to me, quick and deliberate. I looked away, my throat tight. At the bar later, I ordered a tequila boom. Tequila, Sprite, a slam on the counter to make it fizz. Nick was off somewhere, probably flirting with the staff. Owen slid in beside me, casual, like it was nothing. Make it two, he told the bartender, then looked at me. You're good at pretending. Pretending what? I shot back, my voice sharper than I meant. He didn't answer right away. Just took his shot, slammed it down and drank, his throat working as he swallowed. I followed suit, the burn hitting hard. Pretending you're fine, he said finally. His voice low enough to feel private, even in the chaos. Like you're not dying to feel something. I laughed, but it came out brittle. You don't know me, Owen. Don't I? He leaned closer, just enough to make my pulse spike. I know you're not here for him. Before I could fire back, Nick appeared, his arm sliding around my waist. Hey man, he said to Owen, all smiles, but there was an edge to it. Owen nodded, stepping back, but his eyes didn't leave mine. Nick pulled me to a table, and we sat with Graham's crew. I tried to focus, on the stories, the drinks, the way Nick's hand rested on my thigh. But then Owen was there across the table, and his fingers brushed mine under the wood. Not accidental. Slow. Deliberate. My breath hitched, and I pulled my hand back, but the heat lingered. Stop it, I whispered, barely moving my lips. He leaned in, his voice a quiet rasp. You're not the one who needs to be told no anymore. I froze. Nick was laughing, oblivious. His hand now on some waitress's arm as he ordered another round. I stood, muttering something about the bathroom, and wove through the crowd, my heart pounding. In the dim hallway, I leaned against the wall, trying to breathe. Owen didn't follow, but I could still feel him. His words, his touch, the way he saw through every lie I told myself. When I got back, Nick was dancing with the waitress, sloppy and grinning. I didn't care. I sat, staring at my empty glass, the salt rim smudged. Owen was gone, but his presence clung to me, like smoke you can't wash out. I wanted to hate him for it, for making me feel this alive, this unsteady. But all I could think about was how right he was. I wasn't fine. And I wasn't sure I wanted to be. The city was a blur of neon and noise, but I couldn't outrun the itch under my skin. 2 days after the bar, I was still tasting tequila, still feeling Owen's fingers grazing mine. Work kept me busy, spreadsheets, deadlines, fake smiles and Zoom calls, but my mind kept slipping back to him. To that look in his eyes, like he knew me better than I knew myself. Nick was around, but distant, caught up in his own orbit of late nights and cryptic texts. I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. Wednesday night, I lied to him. Meeting Sarah, I said, tossing it out casual as I grabbed my coat. She's a mess, divorce stuff. Nick barely looked up from his laptop, just nodded, and I was out the door before he could question it. Sarah was fine, last I checked. I wasn't headed to her. I was going to a boutique hotel in Chelsea, the kind with overpriced cocktails and too much velvet. Owen had texted me the address that morning, no explanation, just 8 p.m. If you show. I shouldn't have. I knew it, even as I stepped into the cab, my stomach knotting. But I went anyway, in a dress that clung to my curves and heels that clicked too loud on the pavement. The lobby was all low lights and mirrors, reflecting pieces of me I didn't want to see. Owen was there, waiting by the bar, in a dark button-down that made him look older, sharper. He didn't say anything when he saw me, just stood, his eyes tracing me from my heels to my collarbone. I felt naked under that gaze, but I didn't look away. "Drink?" he asked, voice steady, like we were just old friends catching up. "No," I said, too quick. "I'm not staying long." He raised an eyebrow but didn't push. Instead, he nodded toward the elevator. "Let's talk then." I hesitated, my heart thudding. Every sensible part of me screamed to leave, to call that cab back and go home to Nick's predictable chaos. But my feet moved, following him into the gilded cage of the elevator. The doors slid shut, and the air thickened, heavy with everything we weren't saying. He leaned against the wall, hands in his pockets, but his eyes were on me, lingering on the curve of my hip, the pulse at my throat. I crossed my arms, like that could shield me from whatever this was. "You don't have to be here," he said, breaking the silence. His voice was low, careful, but there was an edge to it, like he was daring me to lie. "If you don't want this, say it now." I opened my mouth, ready to snap something sharp, something safe. But nothing came out. My throat was tight, my skin too warm. He stepped closer, not touching, but close enough that I could smell his cologne, woodsy and clean. I stared at the floor, at the gold trim of the elevator, anything but him. But I felt it. His breath, the heat of him, the pull I couldn't name. The doors opened to his floor, but neither of us moved. I looked up, and his eyes were darker now, searching mine. "Last chance," he said, softer this time. I didn't think. I just stepped closer, my breath catching as our eyes locked. The moment stretched, hesitant, then crashed over us, his hands steady on my shoulders, grounding me. In the room, he looked at me like I was something rare, his gaze tracing my edges, not just my shape, but the parts I'd hidden for years. After, I slipped into the bathroom, locking the door. I leaned against the sink, staring at my reflection, flushed cheeks, smudged lipstick, eyes too bright. I waited for the guilt to hit, for Nick's face to flash in my mind. But it didn't. Instead, I felt full, alive, like I'd been starving and hadn't even known it. The tears came anyway, hot and sudden, spilling over as I gripped the counter. Not because I regretted it, but because I didn't. Because I'd forgotten what it felt like to want something this badly and actually take it. I cleaned up, fixed my face, and went back to him. He was sitting on the bed, shirt still off, watching me like he'd been waiting for me to bolt. I didn't. I sat beside him, our thighs brushing, and we didn't talk. We didn't need to. Whatever this was, it wasn't done. And that scared me more than anything. Nick's voice was calm, too calm, when he held up the earring. It dangled between his fingers, a cheap silver hoop catching the morning light in our kitchen. "This isn't yours," he said, not a question, just a fact. I was halfway through pouring coffee, the pot trembling slightly in my hand. I didn't look at him right away, just kept my eyes on the dark liquid pooling in my mug, like it could anchor me. "Guess someone left it," I said, forcing a smile, light as air. "Party at Tessa's, maybe? You know how it gets." He didn't smile back. Just set the earring on the counter, deliberate, like evidence in a trial. "Yeah," he said, voice flat. "Sure." I waited for the explosion. Yelling, accusations, something to match the storm in my chest. But Nick didn't do storms. He just turned, grabbed his keys and walked out, the door clicking shut behind him. The silence he left was worse than any fight. It clung to me, heavy, as I stood there, coffee going cold, the earring staring up like it knew everything. The next morning, he was back to normal. Too normal. He made coffee, handed me a mug with a tight smile. I sipped, expecting sweetness, but it was salt, sharp, bitter, a petty little jab that hit harder than it should have. I spit it into the sink, my hand shaking, and he just watched, leaning against the counter like he'd won something. "Oops," he said, not even pretending to mean it. That was the start of it, our quiet war. No screaming, no tears, just a slow bleed of resentment. I started wearing dresses that hugged my hips a little too tight, leaving my phone out with texts from Alex or Jess glowing on the screen, names vague enough to raise questions. Nick countered with late dinners, coming home smelling like wine and someone else's perfume, his phone locked tighter than a vault. We didn't talk about it. We didn't need to. Every glance, every sigh, was a move in the game. I kept replaying that night with Owen, the hotel, the way his hands felt. Sure, not rushed, like he had all the time in the world to unravel me. It wasn't guilt gnawing at me. It was the opposite. I wanted more. More of that feeling, that aliveness, the way I forgot to be careful with him. But Nick's salt in the coffee stunt, that damn earring. It was like he could smell it on me, the shift, the secret I wasn't even sure I was keeping. At night, I'd lie awake next to him, his breathing steady while my mind raced. I'd think about texting Owen, about showing up at his door and letting it all burn down. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I'd scroll through my phone, rereading his last message. You don't have to hide. Not from me. I'd delete it, then regret it, my thumb hovering over the empty thread like it could bring him back. One afternoon, I caught Nick staring at me over lunch. His fork paused midair. What? I asked, sharper than I meant. Nothing, he said, but his eyes were searching, like he was trying to find the woman he married in the one sitting across from him. Just. You seem different. I laughed. A little too loud. Different how? I'm right here, Nick. He didn't answer, just went back to his food, but the air between us was thick, like we were both waiting for the other to break. I wanted to scream, to tell him I wasn't the one who'd checked out first, that he'd been gone long before I ever stepped into that hotel. But I didn't. I just smiled, sipped my wine, and let the silence do the talking. That night, I slipped out to the balcony, the city humming below. I typed a message to Owen, then deleted it. Typed another. I don't know what I'm doing. I hit send before I could stop myself, my heart pounding like I just jumped off a cliff. His reply came fast. You're waking up. That's enough for now. I stared at those words, the glow of my phone cutting through the dark. They felt true, but they also felt like a warning. I was waking up, yeah, but to what? A life I didn't recognize? A version of me I wasn't sure I could handle? I went back inside, crawled into bed next to Nick, and closed my eyes. But all I could see was Owen's face, his hands, the way he'd looked at me like I was the only thing that mattered. And for the first time, I wondered if I was ready to find out what happened when I stopped pretending I wasn't. The apartment felt like a cage, every creak and hum of the city outside reminding me I was stuck. Nick was out, another work dinner, his phone buzzing with notifications he didn't bother to explain. I didn't ask. I was too busy fighting my own war, the one raging in my head since that night with Owen. The hotel, his hands, the way I'd cried in the bathroom. Not from shame, but from how much I'd needed it. Needed him. It was like he'd cracked me open, and now I couldn't stop seeing the pieces. I locked myself in the bathroom, the one place Nick never bothered me. The mirror was harsh, showing every line, every shadow under my eyes. I looked alive, but frayed, like a wire sparking at the ends. My phone sat on the counter, taunting me. I'd been texting Owen in fits and starts, nothing heavy, just enough to keep the thread alive. But tonight, I needed more. Not his voice, not his touch, just something to make sense of the mess inside me. I hit record on a voice message, my hands shaking. Owen, I started, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know why I'm doing this. I hate how much I love it. How you look at me like I'm not just fading. Like I'm not someone's wife, someone's mom, someone who's supposed to have it all figured out. I hate that I want it so bad, that I'm standing here, talking to you like this, when I should be. God, I don't even know. I paused, my throat tight. I'm scared I'm losing myself. Or maybe I'm finding her, and she's someone I don't know how to be. I stopped, my breath ragged, and stared at the phone. My thumb hovered over delete, ready to erase it, pretend it never happened. But I didn't. I hit send, my heart slamming so hard I thought it might bruise my ribs. The bathroom felt smaller, the walls pressing in as I waited, staring at the screen like it could save me or ruin me. His reply came in minutes, a text, not a call. You don't have to know who you are yet. You just have to stop running from it. Want to disappear? Come to me. I'll let you be whoever you need to be. I read it over and over, each word sinking deeper, like a hook I couldn't shake. Disappear. The idea was terrifying, but it also felt like air after holding my breath too long. I imagined it, showing up at his place, no explanations, just me and him and whatever this was. No Nick, no expectations, no pretending I was fine when I was anything but. I didn't answer him. Not yet. Instead, I splashed cold water on my face, trying to wash away the heat in my cheeks. The mirror showed the same woman, but her eyes were different, wilder, like she was daring me to move. I dried my hands, left the bathroom, and slipped into bed, the sheets cool against my skin. Nick wasn't home, and I didn't care. For once, the emptiness felt like space to breathe. The next day, I moved through life like a ghost. Coffee with Tessa, a client call, a grocery run. But Owen's words followed me, looping in my head. Come to me. I didn't know if it was a promise or a trap, but it felt like both. At lunch, Tessa squinted at me over her salad. You okay? You're like here but not here. I laughed, brushing it off. Just tired. Works a lot. She didn't buy it, but she didn't push. That was Tessa, always close enough to notice, never close enough to pry. I wondered what she'd say if I told her. About Owen, about the voice message, about the way I was unraveling. She'd probably laugh, pour me a shot, and tell me to get it out of my system. But this wasn't something I could just flush out with tequila and a girl's night. By evening, I was back in the bathroom, door locked, phone in hand. I didn't record anything this time. I just sat on the edge of the tub, staring at Owen's message, my finger tracing the screen. I typed, "What if I'm not ready to be her?" But didn't send it. Instead, I locked the phone, set it down, and looked at myself in the mirror again. The woman staring back wasn't fading anymore. She was sharp, awake, and that scared me more than anything. Because if I wasn't running from her, where the hell was I going? I needed to get out. The apartment was suffocating. Nick's silent grudges hanging in the air like damp rot. His coffee stunt, the way he'd started leaving dishes in the sink just to see if I'd snap. It was petty, but it was loud. I couldn't think straight with him around. Couldn't sort out the tangle of Owen's words or the woman I saw in the bathroom mirror. So I booked an Airbnb in Jersey City. A loft with big windows and creaky floors. Just need some space, I told Nick, tossing it out like it was no big deal. He didn't argue, just gave me a look that said he wasn't buying it but didn't care enough to fight. I packed light, a duffel with jeans, a few tops, my makeup bag. Told myself it was for me, a weekend to breathe, to figure out what I wanted. But the lie didn't stick. As soon as I settled into the loft, sprawled on a couch that smelled faintly of someone else's life, I texted Owen. Jersey City. Got a place for the weekend. No invitation, not exactly, but I knew he'd read it for what it was. My phone buzzed 10 minutes later. Be there in 30. When he knocked, my stomach lurched. I opened the door, and there he was. Leather jacket, hair messy from the wind, eyes that saw too much. He didn't say anything, just stepped inside, his presence filling the room like it always did. I wanted to talk, to explain why I was here, but the words wouldn't come. He didn't give me the chance. He closed the distance, his hand catching mine, steady but urgent, pulling me into his orbit. Time blurred, the room fading as we sank into the moment, caught in a rush of feeling, the hardwood cold against my back. His voice broke through, saying my name like it was all he needed to know. After, we ended up on the windowsill, sharing a cigarette I'd found in my bag, the city lights smudging the night beyond the glass. My legs were still shaky. My dress crumpled on the floor. He leaned back, exhaling smoke, his arm brushing mine. I should have felt exposed, sitting there in just his shirt, but I didn't. I felt seen. Too seen. You okay? He asked, his voice softer now, like he was giving me an out. I took a drag, the smoke burning my throat. I don't know. It was the truth, raw and jagged. It's like I'm someone else when I'm here. And I don't know if I'm running to her or from her. He didn't answer right away, just looked out at the skyline, his jaw tight. You're not someone else, he said finally. You're just you. The parts you've been ignoring. I laughed, sharp and bitter. What, you're my therapist now? He turned, his eyes locking onto mine, no trace of a smile. I'm just the guy who sees you. All of you. And I'm not scared of it. My breath caught. I wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, that he didn't know me like he thought. But the words died in my throat, because deep down, I knew he was right. With him, I wasn't Nick's wife, or Graham's mom, or the woman who smiled through gritted teeth at client dinners. I was just me. Messy, wanting, alive. And it was terrifying, because I'd spent so long pretending those parts didn't exist. We didn't talk much after that. Just sat there, passing the cigarette back and forth, the silence heavy but not uncomfortable. I kept stealing glances at him. The curve of his shoulder, the scar I'd traced with my fingers earlier. I wondered what he saw when he looked at me. Not the polished version I showed the world, but the one who was here, raw and unguarded, smoking on a stranger's windowsill. When the cigarette burned out, I stood, my legs unsteady. I should sleep, I said more to myself than him. He nodded, but didn't move to leave. You want me to go? I looked at him, really looked, and felt that pull again, the one that kept dragging me back. No, I said, quiet but sure. Stay. He did. We didn't touch again that night, just lay side by side on the creaky bed, the city humming outside. But as I drifted off, his hand resting inches from mine, I realized something. I wasn't just scared of him or of this. I was scared of how much I knew myself when I was with him. Every want, every flaw, every edge. And how much I didn't want to let that go. Dinner was supposed to be simple. Me, Nick, and Graham, our son, at this cozy Italian place in the West Village. Graham was home from college for a few days, all lanky limbs and easy smiles, filling the table with stories about his classes and some new band he was obsessed with. Nick was in a good mood for once, cracking lame dad jokes, his hand resting on mine like we were still the couple in old photos. I played along, laughing at the right moments, but my mind was elsewhere, caught in the echo of Owen's voice, the weight of his shirt against my skin in Jersey City. I'd been careful since then, keeping my phone locked, my answers vague. But the truth was a splinter, lodged deep, and every day it worked its way closer to the surface. I sipped my wine, watching Graham animatedly describe a professor who sounded like a cartoon villain, and tried to focus. He was the one thing Nick and I had gotten right, the one piece of us that still made sense. I didn't want to mess that up. Then Graham leaned back, picking at his pasta, and dropped it casual as anything. Oh yeah, Owen's been acting weird lately. Keeps talking about this woman he's into. Says she's older, got this wild thing going on. He grinned, oblivious, like it was just gossip. Sounds intense, right? Like he's all in, but he's convinced she'll never pick him. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. The room didn't stop. Nick was still chuckling, the clink of glasses and hum of voices kept going, but it felt like the air had been sucked out. I forced a smile, tight and wrong, and managed, that's interesting. My voice sounded off, too high, but Graham didn't notice, already moving on to some story about a dorm prank. Nick didn't react either, just sipped his drink, his thumb brushing my knuckles absent-mindedly. But my pulse was hammering, loud enough I was sure they'd hear it. Owen. Talking about me. To my son. The idea twisted something in my chest. Fear, yeah, but also a sick kind of thrill, like I was a secret someone couldn't keep. I took a long pull of wine trying to drown it, but Graham's words kept looping. Wild thing, never pick him. Did Owen really think that? Or was he just playing it cool, keeping his cards close? I barely tasted the rest of the meal. I nodded through Graham's chatter, laughed when Nick teased him about his messy apartment, but my head was spinning. What else had Owen said? How much did Graham know? The thought of my son piecing it together, his old friend, his mom, made my stomach churn. But worse was the part of me that didn't care, the part that wanted to know what Owen meant by wild, what he saw when he looked at me. After dinner, we walked Graham to the subway, his backpack slung over one shoulder. He hugged me tight, smelling like pizza and that cologne he'd started wearing. Love you, Mom, he said, then jogged down the steps, gone. Nick and I headed home, his arm around my shoulders, the city lights blurring past. He didn't mention Owen, didn't seem to notice anything was off. But I felt it, the weight of what Graham had said, sitting heavy in my bones. When we got back, Nick crashed on the couch, flipping on some sports highlight reel. I slipped into the bedroom, saying I needed to change, but really I just needed space. I locked the door and dug through my closet, finding the shirt I'd worn at Owen's, a plain white tee, nothing special, but it still carried the ghost of his touch. I held it, my fingers tracing the hem, and then before I could think better of it, I tore it. Not a clean rip, but a jagged one, the fabric giving way under my nails. It wasn't anger. Not exactly. It was panic, sharp and cold, like I could shred the evidence of what I'd done, what I was still doing in my head. I stuffed the pieces into the bottom of a drawer, my breath uneven. The mirror caught my reflection. Eyes wide, cheeks flushed, like I'd just run a mile. I didn't recognize her. Not entirely. She wasn't the mom Graham hugged, or the wife Nick held hands with over dinner. She was something else, something that scared me because I didn't know her limits. I went back to the living room, curled up next to Nick, his arms settling around me like it always did. He didn't look at me, just kept watching the screen, but I wondered if he felt it too. The distance, the thing neither of us was saying. Graham's words hung there, unspoken, and I knew they'd follow me, just like Owen's voice, his hands, the way he'd made me feel like I could be someone new. Someone wild. And I wasn't sure I could outrun her anymore. Tessa's house was a riot of light and sound, her open party spilling across every room and out to the backyard. Strangers mixed with friends, all buzzed on cheap wine and loud music. I'd almost bailed. Graham's words about Owen still gnawed at me, but Nick pushed. "We're going," he said, his tone sharp, like he was proving something. I didn't fight it, just wore a dress that bared my back, lips red as the Merlot I planned to lean into. Nick was all charm, bottle in hand, working the crowd. I hung back, helping Tessa with snacks, avoiding trouble. But I felt Owen before I saw him, on the deck, smoking, his eyes finding me through the glass. My pulse jumped, and I turned away, fussing with napkins, pretending I didn't care. The wine hit fast, softening the edges. I danced with Tessa, her laughter pulling me in, but Owen's gaze kept tugging me back. Nick saw it too. His smile faltered, his grip on the bottle tightening. I told myself it was fine. Just my head playing tricks. Until it wasn't. Nick crossed the yard to Owen, too close, his voice cutting through the noise. "You know who she is, right? My wife. Funny, huh?" His grin was all edges, daring Owen to bite. Owen didn't flinch, just exhaled smoke, glancing at me. "Yeah, funny. Especially how she laughs, with you, and without you." The words sliced clean. Nick's face hardened, and I froze, wine glass heavy in my hand. Tessa grabbed me, whispering, "What's happening?" I couldn't answer. Owen held Nick's stare, calm, like he'd meant every syllable. The party didn't pause, but it felt like it had. Nick laughed, brittle, and walked off, but the air was ruined. I followed him inside, my heart hammering. He was at the bar, pouring hard, ignoring me. "Nick," I tried, but he just said, "Not now," his voice dead. I wanted to lie, say it was nothing, but I couldn't. Owen's truth hung there. Undeniable. I saw him later, still on the deck, watching, not chasing. The party raged on, but it was hollow. Nick distant, me unraveling, and Owen's words like a match waiting to catch. We left in silence, the night cracked open, and I knew we couldn't go back. I didn't plan to go to Owen's place. Not really. But after Tessa's party, after Nick's cold silence in the cab home, my feet moved on their own. It was late, the city a blur of lights and horns, and I was at his door before I could talk myself out of it. My hands shook as I knocked, half hoping he wouldn't answer. He did, shirtless, eyes heavy like he'd been waiting for me to show up or screw it all up. "You shouldn't be here," he said, but he stepped aside, letting me in. His apartment smelled like coffee and leather, a mess of books and takeout boxes. I stood by the window, arms crossed, the skyline mocking me with its calm. "I don't know why I'm here," I admitted, my voice thin. "Everything's a mess." He didn't move closer, just leaned against the counter, watching me. "You broke something," he said, not accusing, just stating it. "Your stability," his mine. "But I didn't know how much I didn't need it till you showed up." His words hit hard, like they always did. I wanted to snap back, to blame him, but he wasn't wrong. I'd cracked us all open, and now we were bleeding. "What do we do?" I asked, hating how small I sounded. He crossed the room then, slow, stopping just short of touching me. "You decide what you want. Not him, not me, you." His voice was low, steady, but his eyes were fire.